What is up, everyone? Welcome to Rump Your Sports College Basketball Previews. I am Steve Boynton at Steve Boynton BT on Twitter. We're closing in on the start of the college hoop season. We're less than 3 weeks out. We kicked off our preview shows the other night with the Big Ten with If You're My Turtle from Establish the Run. You can find them all on YouTube and in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify as we knock them all out. We're going to be doing the top 6 conferences over the next 2-3 weeks. We're here tonight to talk about everything SEC. Arguably the most talented league overall in the country, probably next to the Big 12 or the Big East. I got to bring in my guy Gavin first. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. One down, still a lot more to go. And, we got another conference with a bunch of teams, a lot of turnover, and even some extra, stipulations with waivers and potential injuries to important cogs. So, ready to jump in.
Yeah, let's bring our next guest in, Jack Miller, at JackMiller02 on Twitter. He's a sports bettor, does a lot of NFL fantasy betting, projection stuff all over at Establish the Run. But he's also a big college basketball guy. After having Turtle on with us on Monday, it's become an RPS ETR week. What's up, man? Really glad to have you on with us for the first time.
Yeah, I'm pumped to be here. I can't wait for college basketball. 19 days away. I've been counting down the days, so pumped to be here and pumped to be talking SEC.
Yeah, it's a good conference. It's a deep conference with a lot of teams, so we should probably just jump right into it. We start with Bama. Awesome season last year. Obviously, 31-6. End of the season 4th at KenPom. Projected to take a minor step back on both Torvik and KenPom. Torvik's got him 20th. KenPom 10th. They lose a lot here, Gavin. Brandon Miller, obviously. Noah Clowney's gone. Quinn is finally gone. Bediako's gone. Jaden Bradley transfers out. Namari Burnett transfers out. But they also add a trio of high-impact transfers and a quartet of freshmen that are going to mix in. Lots of turnover here. The most turnover I think they've had in the last couple of seasons, Gav. What do you think overall?
Yeah, when you lose a top 2 pick and you lose the kind of elite rim protection in Charles Bediako and Noah Clowney, it's tough to just kind of plug in and replace with that. Bediako was 4th best in the nation in defensive BPR, so Clowney was also 9th in the SEC. I think Nick Pringles steps into that role as the center. It's going to be a little bit more up in the air. And look, the core of this team is going to be Mark Sears, Aaron Estrada, and Grant Nelson, 3 mid-major up transfers with 2 Frosh and Rylan Griffin and Nick Pringle filling out the starting lineup, who didn't get a ton of run last year. Griffin was certainly promising in spots, and the bench isn't as deep as usual. Latrell Wrightsell, I'm familiar with just being out here on the West Coast at Fullerton. He was really good last year. On a lot of usage, it wasn't the most efficient usage, and it was kind of only 1 out of his 3 years at Fullerton, so it's still a little bit wait and see. And another weird thing, no top 50 recruits, I think, was when I looked for Nate Oates, which is kind of weird, but Sam Walters is getting some hype as the most ready Frosh. So, yeah, it's going to be much interesting just with kind of the core and what they have.
Yeah, Jack, interesting roster coming into this season as compared to last season. Definitely going to be worse defensively overall, just with what they lost. What do you think about this roster here?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to how well Estrada and Grant Nelson can get acclimated to the high major level. I mean, losing Brandon Miller, that's big for both wing defense and shooting. Estrada's a fine shooter. Grant Nelson didn't shoot it all that well last year, so I think that the shooting is maybe taking a little bit of a step back, but should still be a positive relative to some other teams in this conference. And then Nate Oates is going to have them, playing pretty optimally from like an analytics perspective. A lot of shots near the rim, a lot of threes. So I like it from that standpoint, but I think that they are going to need one of Estrada or Grant Nelson or Sears to take another step forward and really be like that go-to guy. Because for now it's kind of a lot of projection on 3 mid-major guys who haven't really shown the ability to be a go-to scorer at the next level.
Yeah, agree. I will say that this overall is a pretty experienced roster, Gav. It's a bunch of older guys, even though they are transfers. 4th highest tempo last season. And with what we said earlier, the defense probably coming back down to earth 2 years ago, between the Herb Jones team and the Clowney Bediako, they were 92nd in adjusted defensive efficiency. I think we see, maybe not that bad, but definitely a step back from number 3 last year. Who are we targeting here in DFS? Grant Nelson had great rates in the Summit. Estrada, a 0.98 fantasy point per minute at Hofstra. Griffin is probably going to start and take a step forward. What do we think there?
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying kind of before we started, the first person you're probably going to play in any Alabama game is the big playing against Alabama. Just given that it's going to be like Pringle and Mo Wagge from West Virginia. I mean, oh boy, that's probably the first place we're going to look. But in regards to this team, the Sears Estrada is going to be tough to, I think, delineate. I imagine Sears is going to come in much more pricier than Estrada will be. And, last time Estrada played at the Power 5 level, it was a friggin' disaster at Oregon. He just got shoved into Altman's doghouse and never saw the light of day. So, yeah, I think Nelson is probably going to be the first place. That being said, Pringle had some pretty nuke games in spots when he was given extended run, albeit usually in blowouts. So he's got some potential to fly under the radar from a price perspective, but still be highly efficient for us.
Yeah, I think Griffin's a guy that I'm going to look at out of the gate, Jack. What do you think as far as the players for fantasy? Grant Nelson, obviously awesome stats, but big jump in opponents here.
Yeah, I think Nelson would be the one I'm most interested in right away. I mean, he against top 100 quality opponents, looking at Torvik last year, his efficiency wasn't very good. So, and then his efficiency in the conference, it was very good. So, I mean, that's going to be a big question to watch. But yeah, I mean, Griffin should see a big role expansion this year, but I mean, he's still like a sophomore who didn't show a whole lot last year, had relatively low usage when he did play. So I'm kind of in wait and see mode there.
Yeah, that's fair. Any last thoughts here, Gav?
No, it's going to come down to the defense. Hofstra actually surprisingly was 14 points better per 100 possessions with Estrada on the floor. So maybe there is a little bit of defense that doesn't initially come to mind when you think of Aaron Estrada as kind of being a run and gun wing. But no, I think still going to be comfortably in the top third of the conference. Just don't know if they really have what it takes to propel kind of into the first or second place conversation.
Yeah, I'm not sure I see a huge ceiling here. All right, let's move on to Arkansas. Interesting team last year with all the big frosh that they brought in. They ended 22-14 and 22nd at KenPom. Torvik's got them 22nd at KenPom to start the year, or at 22nd to start the year. KenPom's got 14th. They lose the 3 frosh, Black, Nick Smith, and Jordan Walsh. Ricky Council's also gone. That's 4 guys who are going to play professionally at some level. And they bring in just a shitload of transfers here. They bring in Khalif Battle from Temple, Tremont Mark from Houston, our friend El Ellis from Louisville, Jeremiah Davenport from Cincy, Chandler Lawson from Memphis. Gav, what do we think about this roster? I really like it here. It'll be interesting just because of who the coach is and what he usually does in the first 2 months of the season, finding out rotations with another set of just brand new faces overall.
Man, Musselman apparently got really sick of this team's lack of shot making over the last couple of years. Outside the top 300 in 3-point percentage each of the last 2 years, while being inside the top 75 in open 3 rate. It's just weird to see for an Eric Musselman coach team. But yeah, I mean, if basketball was played with 3 balls on the court at one time, this would be the best team in the country. And I think there's a lot of questions of how these pieces actually mesh and fit together and make one another better, because it's a lot of guys who, for the most part, have hunted their own shot on high usage with not the greatest volume, especially looking at you like Khalif Battle and Keon Menefield, who sounds like he's going to redshirt. But if Battle's in a boot and out for extended time, who knows if Menefield holds that. Tremont Mark, dude, tell me this isn't like the Jalen Tate 2.0 transfer right here. Yeah. Super long rangey, defensive minded wing who can still hit shots. Not the best offensive player, but good enough and just so good defensively. Yeah, Trevon Brazil coming back. He was the highest defensive BPR on the team last year in 9 games. Sounds like he's a full go. I think he has a mega year and really helps spread out the floor and kind of alleviate some of the spacing issues that they had last year on offense.
Yeah, I mean, he was set up to have a mega year last year before he tore his ACL. Jack, we got a lot of new faces here. They lose all that young talent, but this is a much older team. Lots of experience coming in. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the big thing with this team is the depth. I mean, they have we've listed all of them already, but like they're gonna have L. Ellis, Jeremiah Davenport, Chandler Lawson, all coming off the bench in all likelihood. And those are proven players at a relatively high major level. Ellis, I think, should benefit from not having to be the point guard. I think he was out of position last year, and now he can play more in the role that he is better suited for. I still think shooting's a little bit of a question with this team. Khalif Battle can knock him down. Davenport can knock him down. Maybe Ellis is a better shooter than we saw last year, considering that he's not going to have all that attention on him. But like Tremont Mark, Devontae Davis, like these guys are not knockdown shooters. And so I'm a little worried that it's going to be the kind of what we saw last year where they just fell in love with the mid-range. But I mean, they do just have a bunch of talent on paper. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because we have seen it take a couple of months for Muss to kind of figure out his rotations, especially for daily fantasy purposes. Kind of makes him frustrating early in the season. I will note with Devo, Gav, so in his 3 years from 15%, 27%, 35 last year. That actually kind of surprised me.
41 in conference.
Yeah, that's pretty good there. Yeah, I agree with Brazil. I think he's going to explode this season, stretch 4. I think he fits well. Jalen Graham was really good off the bench. I was surprised that they didn't use him as much. Probably like a doghouse thing. Really good fantasy point per minute when he is out here. I'm interested to see how like the Jalen Graham, Mekhi Mitchell, Chandler Lawson stuff kind of sorts itself out, because whoever does start there in DFS is definitely going to be usable. Mekhi Mitchell, 0.97 last season on 4.5 stocks per 40 minutes. So that is.
He should not be the starting center of a Sweet 16 team, though. Come on.
Yeah, but like, I don't know.
And Muss still did it. And now they get Brazil too. Man.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to shake out. They just have so many pieces here. Any last thoughts, DFS wise, Gav here?
I think DFS, this team's going to be very touch and go and bumpy in the early going. Like in the non-con, we talk about how it takes a while for Muss to figure out his rotation and who he wants to play. You basically have multiple JD Notes now that you got to filter through. And I could see this being a case of like, dude, a couple of these guys, whether Battle starts or something like that, whether it's L. Ellis starting, they take a couple bad shots and Muss just gets pissed at him and we don't see him the rest of the game because they do have the depth, right? So paying up for the Arkansas guys is going to be scary for anyone not named Brazil.
Yeah.
I think the guards are going to be pretty treacherous until we get to conference play.
Yeah. Any last thoughts here, Jack?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good synopsis of it. I think maybe Devo Davis's minutes are a little bit safer just since he's been around for longer. But I do think that the guard rotation is going to be kind of nightmarish to figure out early on.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. We got Auburn next. 21-13 last year, 32nd is where they ended up at KenPom. Both Torvik and KenPom have them taking a small step forward here, 22nd and 15th. They lose Wendell Green and Alan Flanagan in the offseason, two guys who have been there a long time. They bring in a top 15 point guard in the country, Aiden Holloway. They bring in Denver Jones from FIU and a couple other transfers here, Gavin. So some turnover here, but I think encouraging upside turnover. What are your thoughts on the roster here?
Yeah, you finish 7th in the SEC, you get a tourney win, you lose your starting backcourt and basically all three of the adults that you had in the room last year with Flanagan, Zep Jasper, and Wendell Green. So you bring in a freshman and Aiden Holloway, 5-star. Everything sounds pretty positive with what's going on with him. You return maybe the best front court in the conference potentially. Like Janai Broome, Jalen Williams. I mean, Jalen Williams is going to be an NBA guy one day. I don't know if he's going to get drafted, but he's going to play in the NBA. Has had a couple of seasons where he's been inside the top 25 in SECO rating. And Janai Broome is kind of stepping out to the 3-point line a little bit. I think we definitely need to monitor for DFS. Like, obviously, the minutes are a concern with him, given who you have to pay or not play when you play Broome, and the fact that they'll get more minutes. But, like, dude, if he starts hitting threes, he shot 29% last year on 31 attempts total, but had taken 5 in his first 2 years at Moorhead. So definitely need to monitor that. I think the team is going to be sneaky. You know, Denver Jones is a good 3-point shooter as well. I think he was like 37% at FIU. So there's some shot making here. Bruce Pearl always coaches guys up, gives them plenty of confidence, and I just think you got to keep old KD on the bench as more of a bench spark plug kind of microwave energy guy.
Yeah, agreed there. So Broome coming in from Moorhead at a 1.40 fantasy point per minute, and pretty much sustained a lot of it. 1.23 is just gnarly. But like you said, he averaged 26.5 minutes per game. No one on the entire roster averaged even 28 here, as Pearl is known to go pretty deep, Jack. What are your thoughts on the turnover here and what they bring in?
Yeah, I was never that much of a Wendell Green fan, so I don't really think that that's a huge loss for them, especially if Aiden Holloway can live up to his star ranking. From what I read about him, I can't say like I know all that much, but he's apparently like a knockdown shooter, which I think is going to be really good for them. I agree that if he's a stud, then leaving KD Johnson on the bench and just rolling with Holloway and Denver Jones is probably their best course of action. And Denver Jones had amazing stats at FIU. FIU, right? That's Denver Jones, I think. So if Holloway and Jones can be a great backcourt, I think Janai Broome is one of the best players in the conference. I think this Auburn team has really, really high upside if the backcourt can put it together.
Yeah, Gav, the starting five is just really, really strong, right? You got Holloway, Jones, Williams, Broome. Who do you think they start on the wing there, though? They brought in like a JUCO guy that I know the Almanac was talking up a bit. I'm skeptical of any JUCO guy coming in, let alone as a starter. What do you think they do with that 5th spot, or is this just going to be a really focused team as far as where the usage goes?
I think that 5th spot gets pretty roulette-y. Chad Baker-Mazara was the former 6th man of the year for San Diego State. This is also his 4th school in 4 years. So I'm in the mindset that if you're playing for 4 schools in 4 years, like either you're a terrible cancer or you're just not that great. So we'll see how it translates now to the Power 5 level or Power 6 level. Even Trey Donaldson, you can kind of shove in there as a backcourt and slide at Denver Jones as a small ball 3. So there's a couple different ways you can play it, but I think it just gets pretty rotational for that last spot.
Cool. Any last thoughts here, Jack, on Auburn?
I think that's mostly pretty good.
Yeah, I just think if Holloway, I think he's the key to this team's ceiling. I agree with you. I was never a big Wendell Green guy. If Holloway can shoot it better than Green, I think that kind of unlocks the upside here. But that's going to be a theme with a lot of these SEC teams, is that they're not very good shooting teams. Any last thoughts here, Gav?
No, don't think so.
All right, let's go to Florida. 16-17 is where they finished last season after the awful late season injury to Castleton. They just kind of sputtered down the stretch pretty predictably without him. They ended up 74th at KenPom. Both Torvik and KenPom have them much better than that going into the season. Torvik 24th, KenPom 39th. They obviously lose Colin Castleton. Kyle Lofton's gone. Reeves is gone. Alex Fudge is gone. Myrion Jones is gone. So lots of turnover here, Gav, but some pretty good gets in the transfer portal, I think. Walter Clayton from Iona comes in the SEC. Tyrese Samuel, who had an awesome year at Seton Hall, comes in. They have a big from Marshall, Zion Pullen from Riverside comes in. So lots of turnover for Golden. We saw him push the pace in season 1, which was awesome for us in DFS. What do you think of the new look Florida roster here?
Yeah, 9-9 in the SEC, and the first losing season since Billy Donovan's first year coaching in 15 is not the brightest. But you seem to think that these are a little bit more handpicked guys from Golden. They had a full offseason to work with. Yeah, I mean, it starts with Walter Clayton. He played off ball at Iona, but was still 9th in the conference in assist rate and 72nd nationally in steal percentage while being a 43% three-point shooter. You could play him at the point, I think. He's like an awesome combo guard that they bring in. Zion Poland, you said from UC Riverside, like, I love this guy. He was a 3-year starter, usage hog, 3-level scorer. How about this? And I gotta give some love to my small West Coast guys. Florida as a team last year, 27th percentile point per possession in the last 4 seconds of the shot clock. Zion Poland, 88%. He'll be like a microwave bench scorer. He's not the greatest defender like Clayton brings to the table and like Kugel will bring and Will Richard to a certain extent, but definitely going to fill a role. And also love some Tyrese Samuel, like 6'11". You can play him at the 5, you can play him at the 4. Didn't have that great of a three-point shooting year last year, but awesome offensive rebounder. And Florida was the worst SEC rebounding team, so certainly going to help along with Hanglotten from Marshall, another 7-1 guy. They could roll out 6'11" and 7-1 as at their 4-5. That'll certainly cure some of the rebounding woes that they had last year.
Lots of new pieces here, but I think pretty interesting pieces to go along with the guys coming back in Kugel and Richard, who I like both of those guys. How do you like the fit of this team, and what do you think of the roster?
Yeah, I like this team a lot. I mean, they're not very deep. I think they have like 6 or 7 like actually good players, but I think that those 6 or 7 guys are all really good, and we've pretty much hit on them all. Will Richard was one of the most efficient shooting players in the country, at least in high major, I should say. Not very high usage, but Riley Kugel flashed last year when he got the chance. Walter Clayton was a beast at Iona. This Micah Hanglotten guy, I don't know a whole lot about him, but his defensive stats are, in terms of steals and blocks, really good. He did average 3.5 fouls in 25 minutes a game, so I don't know how much he'll be able to stay on the floor, but the good news is that if he can't stay on the floor, they have Tyrese Samuel to back him up, and he can play the 5 too. So yeah, I think that the top 6 or 7 players on this team is up there with pretty much anyone in the conference.
Yeah, I'm really high on this team too. And what you said with them not being very deep, Gav, that's good for us in DFS, especially because all of these guys really good fantasy point per minute. Walter Clayton 1.06 as a guard, that is gnarly. You don't see that very often. We all think that Kugel is going to take a step forward. Once Castleton went down, he averaged 17.3 points per game, shot 38% from 3. Big upside there, and probably most importantly was up over that 30 minutes per game at the end of the season. Samuel was like on the bench for 3 years at Seton Hall, slid into the starting role last season, 0.94. Like, I like him a lot. The Hanglotten guy from Marshall, top 10 effective field goal percentage in the country with a massive steal and block rate. Will that translate? I don't know, but I think he's going to be cheap, and he's got upside for the minutes that he's on the court. So, Gav, DFS wise, I think this is going to be a really, really good team for us to target. All of that plus the pace that Golden's going to want to play with.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it'll be a little bit similar to Alabama in a sense that you got 3 really good kind of quasi backcourt wing pieces and the Clayton Kugel Richard trio. Like, dude, Will Richard was really good last year. Like 50th best O rating nationally. Like most of the guys that Florida lost to, like Miriam Jones he sucks. Trey Bonham sucks. Like Alex Fudge is a defender. Like Kawachi Reeves, I mean, dude, he kind of sucks too. Like get all those guys off. I love this team. This team I think this team has like their ceiling is like 3rd best in the conference. I don't know if it's quite number 1, but I think this is a team that's going to sneak up on a lot of people. Pieces fit together way better. Hanglotten, Sunbelt Freshman of the Year. 72% from the field in conference. Guy barely even shot 3-pointers and still put up that effective field goal percentage. So there's going to be DFS pieces to use. I would tend to think it's going to lean more towards the front court, though.
Yep, same. Any last thoughts here, Jack?
Yeah, I know Gav said that their ceiling is third. I bet 15-1 Florida to win the SEC. So I'm hoping the ceiling is first. But it was a pretty kind of a long shot. So we'll see.
We love the long shots on this show. We gave out a bunch of them last year. Yeah, we have to remember to mix in our futures that we've taken.
I don't hate that, dude. I mean, we were just talking about this on the show. Like if this is the hardest of the power conferences to do standings for, like it's about as flat at the top as we've seen in a good while. Like, it was Bama last year. It was Auburn was the wrecking ball the year before. So it's like, we'll see. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't hate it.
Yep. I like that. All right, let's move on to a much less inspiring team here. Georgia, 16-16 last year, 154 is where they ended at KenPom. Torvik's got them starting the year at 89th. KenPom has them starting the year at 57th. Gavin and I had a long text conversation about Georgia's KenPom ranking the other day. They lose to Terry Roberts. Okendo's gone. Braylon Bridges is gone. And they bring in a bunch of transfers. Thomason from Niagara, Jalen Deloach from VCU, just a bunch of transfers and 4 freshmen of note, including a guy named Blue Kane, which is nice. So, Gav, what do we got here with Georgia?
Yeah, you lose your top 3 scorers. It was Mike White's, first year at the helm, so we saw playing time just literally just like chucking spaghetti up against the wall. It was a total shit show trying to project minutes for these guys, who's starting, who's playing what. But yeah, you mentioned Thomason. Like, he's another guy, kind of like Nelson. I have a note for him. Another guy who's never had a 90 or better O rating versus tier A and B competition in any of his years. Was a mega usage guy. He was like, I think he was like 31st in the nation in scoring. So like he put up some huge numbers. We'll see how it translates. You didn't mention RJ Melendez, who's going to be every national journalist's favorite, pick for this team and to really break out. And Underwood got in his head and he couldn't shoot last year because of that. Whatever. I mean, yeah, he's a shooter. He's a 6'7" wing with some upside. But Jaden Deloach is like, I think my favorite pickup for this team. Like, he was the best A10 defensive BPR, like by real margin, like serious margin. 6'9". Probably could even play him at small ball 5 in spots too. I'd feel fine with him protecting the rim, especially when your other option is Russell Chua. I mean, just a big warm body down there, like USF was pretty negligible in terms of on-off splits on both sides of the ball, with or without him. Like, couldn't even tell he was on the floor basically by those. And he's supposed to be a 28-minute a game rim protector in the SEC. I don't know. It calls me skeptical.
Russell Chua averaged 31.4 minutes a game. How many blocks per game do you think he had, Gav?
At 7 feet tall, probably less than 1.
0.3 per game.
Oh, my God.
Playing 31 minutes. Jack, interesting roster here. Well, not that interesting, but lots of new faces here. Some turnover with some role players coming back. What do you think about Georgia? How do you sort this out?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure who's gonna score for this team. I guess it's Thompson's gonna try to be that guy, but it's such a big jump from Niagara to Georgia to the SEC. I'm curious to see how RJ does. I graduated from Illinois in May, so I'm very familiar with the ups that he went through as a freshman, and then the huge downs he went through last year when he really did seem like he was just super inside his own head. I think a new start at a new team is good for him. I'm not sure how good he actually is as like a shot creator. I think he can make shots if he's set up with them, but I'm not sure the ball handling is good enough for him to like be a go-to guy. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys. This obviously is not, a great team, not going to be an NCAA tournament team. And yeah.
Yeah. I think what kind of screwed with RJ was like they were kind of yo-yoing him in and out of the lineup. He wasn't sure what his role was going to be from game to game. Gav,
There was some off court stuff, some off court like rumors that flew around that I probably shouldn't spread, but yeah.
I'll have to Google those after the show. You said that they're probably not going to shoot it well, Gav. Last year, 304th in 3-point percentage, 307th in 2-point percentage. I'm not seeing that getting much better here. Is there anything that we can look at DFS-wise on Georgia?
Yeah, I think this is, and with Mike White and playing time, I think, again, guards are going to be really sketchy. You know, we mentioned Thomason, we mentioned Melendez. You also have Justin Hills coming back. Jabri Abdur-Rahim was the team's leading OBPR, or he's the highest returning OBPR for any guy from last year. God, you know, Thomason feels like Terry Roberts in terms of its high usage. It's not going to be the most efficient very often, and who knows what we get from the peripheral category. So probably one that I'll look more in the front court. We'll get a decent price on Deloach, I'd imagine. I don't think there's going to be any interest in Russell Chewin. If he beats me, he beats me. But keep in mind, like Matthew Alexander Moncrief, he didn't play.
Oh God, here we go.
Well, just he didn't play at all in the non-con. He was hurt. He started behind the 8 ball. He still played every game in the SEC. We saw there was some upside at Oklahoma State. Maybe it was just kind of getting off on the wrong foot. I think it might have even been a foot injury, so it might be literally and figuratively. But he could have a better year when healthy. Don't be surprised if he comes in around like 3-5 and he's getting 20 minutes a game and he's someone we can use to punt with. I punted with Grosser.
If he's 3-5, you're definitely playing some Matthew.
Oh yeah, no question.
Yeah, no, I think Deloach will be interesting for DFS. 0.97 fantasy points per minute. You know, if he's playing 25, 28, and then Thomason, just kind of depending on what price he starts the year at. Sometimes they price up these guys who had mega usage coming in. Any last thoughts here, Jack?
Not really.
All right, let's go to Kentucky. Interesting team here. 22-12 last year. 27th at KenPom is where they ended. 16th and 18th at both Torvik and KenPom coming into the season. They lose Big O. Oscar Tshiebwe is gone. Jacob Toppin's out. Cason Wallace got drafted. Severe Wheeler transferred again. Chris Livingston is gone. CJ Frederick is gone. Gav. They do bring in Trey Mitchell, talented guy, but another guy who's been at several different teams in the last few years. And then at least 6 top 100 freshmen. What are your thoughts on this team coming in? I know that they are already kind of dealing with the injury bug here.
Yeah, on top of the injury bug, man, is this the hottest that Cal's seat has ever been in his Kentucky career?
Yeah, probably.
They haven't made the second weekend since Tyler Hero was on the team. Think about that for a second. Like, it's been a minute. They strike out on Oscar returning. They strike out on Dickinson in the portal. Now you have Onyeso and Bradshaw hurt coming into the year. You get back Antonio Reeves, but like, dude, Reeves took over 400 shots last year. Like,
that was not the plan going into the year.
No. I mean, like, I should have looked at what he did at Illinois State. I wouldn't be surprised if it was more. It was just insane. They were so devoid of perimeter shot making. Like, Frederick was down to 31% last year, that they just shoved the ball into his hands every possession. Like, that's just not going to be a recipe for success. The last time a Cal team finished inside the top 100 in 3-point rate, 2016. Last time they finished inside the top 200, 2011. Oh, sorry. Last time they finished inside the top 200 for 3-point rate was 2011. Like, it's just a very archaic style of basketball. I don't know if Cal's going to make the necessary adjustments given what he has with the freshman class coming in. And maybe DJ Wagner is just all that and everything and more. I don't know. I'm always skeptical on freshmen. And the note I have on Trey Mitchell was that West Virginia was actually better both offensively and defensively without Mitchell on the floor last year. We look at Hoop Explorers on-offs. Like, I'm not buying no Trey Mitchell at this point of his career. He was an important role on Texas when they didn't have any perimeter shot making, and he was kind of the one big that could stretch it. But no, I got him finishing. I had him initially finishing third. I just moved him down to fourth behind Arkansas. So yeah, I'm going to be much more bearish than any sort of KenPom ranking or national journalist is going to have these guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is Trey Mitchell's fourth school in 4 years. He was UMass. He left Texas after they put him on the bench, West Virginia, and now here. Jack, we got a very, very young roster in a very old and talented league here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the defense here could be kind of rough. I kind of think that you're getting from Reeves, you're getting from Trey Mitchell. I've seen a lot of hype out there on DJ Wagner and Justin Edwards, so I think it's kind of going to come down to like if they can provide enough offense to overcome the defensive shortcomings. At this point in the year, I can't say that I'm super in tune with the scouting report on all of these 5-star freshmen. But yeah, I mean Edwards and Wagner, if they can put in like a really good year and one of them can be like Brandon Miller, then this team is probably going to be really good. But if not, and if they fall below expectations, then it could be pretty rough for Kentucky.
Yeah, and with their number 5 overall recruit, Aaron Bradshaw, already coming into the season with a foot injury, he's in a boot. You never like the big men coming into the season with foot injuries, so that's not looking great. Gav, we have a note here that it's just a huge range of outcome team. I think maybe the most of the ones that we've talked about so far, besides maybe Bama. I will note that Cal dropped the tempo over 100 ranks year over year, from 150 2 years ago to 256 last year. Not sure, if that was personnel based or what. But yeah, I think this is going to be basically dependent on where guys like Wagner and Edwards are priced to start the season in DFS. Any DFS thoughts here, or is this just a learn as we go type thing?
Whew. Yeah, I'm probably not playing anybody on Kentucky until, one, we get conclusive injury reports. 2, we see pricing, and even when we get pricing, I'm probably not paying, over $5K for any of these guys, just with the lineup variance we could see. Who knows how good these freshmen are looking in practice, and if I don't know. This team's going to be a mess DFS wise. I just can see myself personally just not playing anyone the first couple games, seeing how it goes, and then adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and we've seen these specifically the Kentucky freshmen come in pretty expensive in DFS to start the season. Any last thoughts here, Jack?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
All right, let's move on. LSU, they took it on the chin last season, especially after the hot start. They ended 14-19, 151 at KenPom. I was surprised, Gav, when we were charting this team. Torvik has them 49th to start the year, KenPom 47th. They lose KJ Williams, who was just a monster for them last year, 18-8 guy. Really, really good season. Adam Miller transferred again. Cam Hayes is gone, and both of the justices are gone, Hill and Williams. They bring in a bunch of transfers. We've said a lot, but that's the state of college basketball that we're in right now. Headlined by Jalen Cook. I know that you'll talk about him. Will Baker from Nevada. Jordan Wright, I think, is really, really interesting, coming in from Vandy. Carlos Stewart from Santa Clara. And then a guy who is completely log-jammed at Kentucky, Damian Collins, also comes in. What do you think about the roster turnover here? And talk about Jalen Cook a little bit.
Yeah, what they lost looks really similar to Florida. You lose the key cog that kind of carry your team, and then you lose kind of just a bunch of bodies. Like, team was obviously bad last year, so I'm not even mad that a bunch of people walk out the door in those situations. They started 12-1. They actually won their first SEC game against Arkansas somehow. They proceeded to lose their next 13 before finishing 2-16. That being said, they were last in the SEC, but they were the third lowest KenPom team in front of Georgia and South Carolina. So, analytics, standings, whatever you want to do with that. I have here, is this the deepest portal haul? Is this the best 1 through 5 portal haul in the conference? You're going to have to bring in Damian Collins and think that he steps into not even a meaningful role, but whatever the role he plays, more regresses back to the status of his pedigree than kind of what he's not been able to show at Kentucky. Jalen Cook is waiting on a waiver, so it's like when it's hard to project these teams in the standings, this is the first one with a huge asterisk next to it because if they get Jalen Cook, then, they're probably more, they'll threaten the middle part of the conference. Without Jalen Cook, like they're probably scraping to get off the bottom potentially because he's that meaningful of a point guard and facilitator of offense. But yeah, it's pretty good haul with Will Baker, Jordan Wright, and then Carlos Stewart. So I'm if they get Cook, I'm bullish.
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical that these waivers are going to come through. We saw a couple get denied today for the Cincy transfers. Jack, what do you think about the roster turnover here and then outlook on the season for LSU?
Yeah, it really does all come down to Cook. I mean, if they have him, then this is a pretty decent backcourt, I think, with Jalen Cook and Carlos Stewart and Jordan Wright, who had kind of a weird season at Vanderbilt last year. The front court, I don't think is like all that special. I mean, Will Baker, I think, is a solid player, but I don't think he's like, that amazing or anything. But Jalen Cook is like a big difference maker. And then Carlos Stewart was pretty good last year at Santa Clara. Jordan Wright flashed a lot a couple years ago. Is kind of like second in command to Scottie Pippen before kind of a weird season last year where he was in and out of the starting lineup. So I don't know if they're gonna, even with Cook, I don't really think that they're all that great. But if they don't have Jalen Cook, I think that they might be, bottom 2 in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, Gav, if they don't get the waiver on Cook, who even starts at point? Like who
you YOLO with the freshman at that point.
You just YOLO it with the freshman.
Yeah, seriously.
That doesn't sound great in a conference full of guys who can really pressure the ball. So thoughts there. And then I've always been a Jordan Wright guy. Jack's right that he had the weird season, but like he's shown that he can do it in this league. We've talked about a lot of projection on up transfers that, if they do this, then they could be good. He posted a 0.91 last year in this conference. I know that everyone's high on Tyrell Ward. He was a top 50 guy last year. Didn't really do much, even in the minutes that he was given. So I'm more of a Jordan Wright guy here. I think that he's the target here for DFS. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it gets pretty crowded at the wing. Jordan Wright, Tyrell Ward, Derek Fountain is there as well, and Damian Collins. So, yeah, Damian Collins is probably a little big for a wing, but the reason I like this portal haul is kind of how it fits LSU, right? Matt McMahon is very like Jerry Stackhouse-esque in terms of running shooters through 1.5 billion ball screens. And like the best 3-point shooter last year was KJ. You're not running KJ through a bunch of screens. Like Miller shot like shit. And, Wright's a shooter. Stewart's a shooter. I think Collins can shoot pretty well for his size. Will Baker can even step out a little bit, even if it's not all the way to the 3-point line with crazy efficiency. But, yeah, I think look, if they start the freshman, he's going to come in and he's going to be 4K, and we're going to jam him for 2.5 weeks until they fix his price, probably is how it's going to go. But this team is mostly going to revolve, I think, in terms of production-wise, through the wings. And, Jordan Wright amongst them with Ward Fountain probably being the core of that, especially if they don't have Cook.
Yeah, I've got Baker here at 39% and 36% from 3 on about 2 attempts per game last 2 years. Any last thoughts here on LSU, Jack?
Not really.
Yeah, this is it's tough to break down when like their probable best player we don't even know is going to be on the team yet. Speaking of that, let's go to Ole Miss, where we got two of those situations coming in. 12-21 last season. Kermit's out. They ended 122nd at KenPom. Bart Torvik, Gav, has this team at 39th to start the year. KenPom's got him 82nd. They lose Daishan Ruffin. Miles Burns is gone. Amari Abram is gone. McInnes, Robert Allen, and James White are all out the door. Like we were talking about with Cook for LSU, Ole Miss is still waiting on transfer waivers for 2 big-ass names. Brandon Murray from Georgetown, Musa Cisse from Oklahoma State, 2 impact players there. Alan Flanagan's here. Jalen Murray from St. Peter's, point guard, comes in. The monster from Western Kentucky, Jamarian Sharp, transfers in. And then Austin Nunez from Arizona State How do we approach Ole Miss with the uncertainty here, Gav?
Well, you didn't even mention their biggest haul of the portal and Chris Beard. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, we'll let others speculate on the off the court stuff. All I can speak to is that the guy's just an elite college basketball coach. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it's another one of these teams. 3-15 last year in the SEC, just boot everybody out, including old Kermit Davis. Like, it clearly wasn't working over there. The 82nd to 39 split has to be like the biggest one between the two sites of anybody in the conference, I'd imagine. But it's like, I think they can survive without Cisse because they have Sharp. I mean, it's pretty duplicative with those two. Like, that being said, each of the last two seasons, the worst rim defense point per possession that either one of them has been involved with is the 34th best in the nation. So they're going to be good no matter who plays. They need Murray a little bit, I think, more for like the perimeter shot creation, because Jalen Murray coming in from St. Peter's to run the point is going to be another one of these up transfers, like big up transfers, and might not be the most efficient. So yeah, it's one of the biggest asterisk teams in the conference, if not the most, with what Murray and Cisse can mean to them and if they get the waivers or not.
Yeah, Jack, with these waivers, how do we handicap a team like Ole Miss coming in the season with the roster?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. And I wonder if that's like the difference between KenPom and Torvik, is like one of them has the waivers in yes waivers, and one of them
that would make sense.
No waivers. If both of them are in, I actually kind of like this team. I think that they have obviously good rim protection with Cisse and Sharp, and then the shot creation with Morrell and Brandon Murray is pretty good too. I don't know all that much about Jalen Murray, but hopefully he can be serviceable for them, at least in terms of setting the table for Morrell and Murray. Murray's efficiency obviously tanked last year at Georgetown, but I mean, I think a lot of that was just that he was tasked with like shooting the ball every possession down. They had injuries too, and at times it was literally just like they had two guys shooting the ball every time down the floor. So if they can get him and Cisse, I think it's a pretty decent squad on paper.
Yeah, I mean, if they get both those guys, Gab, I do like the starting five, right? And then you got Flanagan and Sharp off the bench. I mean, Beard knows how to build a team, so I just kind of trust him here. But for DFS, let's assume that they are both denied, because we've seen a bunch get denied lately. What happens then if they don't have Murray or Cisse? I think Matt Morrell just absolutely nukes in that case, and like Sharp could be really, really nice for DFS as well, just forced into more minutes, right?
Yeah, definitely. Sharp's going to put up, great rates regardless, just by being that tall. I would say as a general rule, we probably assume that these waivers don't go through unless they do, and then we can kind of adjust accordingly. It doesn't sound like they're going to be very liberal with the adjudication of these decisions, but yeah, I mean, Matt Morrell, I think he fell into kind of a Jameson battle thing last year, where you're the dude on just such a dog shit team that it's just like you don't even want to be out on the court playing and just getting your ass whooped night in and night out. Like, I think the team will certainly be better this year. Hopefully that re-energizes him a little bit. But we didn't even mention, like, Jamin Brakefield was a double-digit scorer last year on 35% from the field. Like, he's probably second fiddle to Matt Morrell if we don't get any of the waivers. So, like, he's going to be in the conversation as well. But I think it centers around mostly those three: Morrell, Brakefield, Sharp.
Yeah, Morrell shot 39% from three 2 years ago, only 30% last year. That's probably why he's not in the NBA right now. Any last thoughts here on Ole Miss, Jack?
Nope.
All right, let's go to Mississippi State. 21-13 last year. They end the season 53rd to KenPom. Torvik's got them 40th to start the year. KenPom's got them 27th. I assume that has Tolu Smith in there and not hurt. Obviously, yeah, that's the biggest thing here. We'll get to that after the losses and the newcomers. They lose not much. Stevenson, Eric Reed are gone, and they bring in Andrew Taylor, who was really, really good at Marshall, the second Marshall transfer that we've talked about here. and a couple of low-level transfers, along with Jimmy Bell from West Virginia, who they're going to have to rely on probably more than they expected to start the season. What do you think of this roster? It looks pretty similar to last year just because they didn't lose that much.
Yeah, it's what do they lose? Like 11 or 12 points per game from a couple guys who were rotational guards, and bring back still a pretty elite defense. They were dead last in the nation in 3-point percentage, like 363 out of 363, and a full percent lower than the next worst. Like it was
such shit.
It was diabolical, brother. Like 26.2%. They started 1-7 in the SEC and finished 7-3. I think that in the SEC, I think that speaks to Chris Jans as a coach. I think buying in on him is always going to be a better idea than not. I don't think Tolu's going to kill them on defense, him being out. Like, yeah, Jimmy Bell is not Toulouse Smith, but where it's going to hurt him is on the offensive end, where they're obviously, we just discussed, a little bit devoid of just pure shot making. But it was like pretty unanimous across the board. All these guys just had bad shooting years compared to their years past. And the team is old as shit too, man. Like, it might even, when it's all said and done, when the experience stuff comes out on Ken Palm, these could be the number one in the conference. So we'll see. I think the floor is much higher than last year in Jans' second year with the defense that they'll put on the floor night in and night out. And the shot making just cannot physically, it literally cannot be worse from three than 363 out of 363. So I think they're getting some positive regression there. They threaten kind of the 3-4 range, but fall into kind of the 6-7 for me.
Yeah, they bring back pretty much everyone here, Jack. Like Gav said, 9th in adjusted effective defense, 336 in tempo. So lots of low-scoring kind of grinder games for Mississippi State. What do you think overall?
Yeah, I think without Tolu, the offense is just going to be like absolutely brutal unless Andrew Taylor just comes in and starts like doing exactly what he did at Marshall, which seems pretty unlikely. But I think assuming Tolu's back by conference play, which I think he should be based on what I saw, then I think this can be a pretty decent team. I do think that there's no way they shoot like 26% or whatever from three, but I also think that it's still going to be like a bad shooting team. Like even if they take a step forward, they can still like take a step forward and be pretty bad. But Andrew Taylor should help a lot in that regard. 36% on high volume. So if he's not shooting 7 threes a game, maybe he can get up to that 38, 39% range. So yeah, I think it's a solid team. It's nice that they bring everyone back because that makes them pretty easy to project. Should have an elite defense again.
Yeah, we might be playing some unders here, Gav, on Mississippi State early in the season. I just pulled up Andrew Taylor's tier A and B O rating last year, 78.7. You don't love to see that. Is there anything that we can look to DFS wise on this team while to lose out? Maybe Jimmy Bell is just like dirt fucking cheat and we just play him because he's going to be out on the court a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, he's also going to be a guy who is going to be played as stone chalk and is going to foul 50% of the games he's chalk. So buckle up for that. But that's what we're going to have to deal with. I don't know why I don't have the note here. I'm like 99% sure when I looked on Synergy, like Andrew Taylor's half court point per possession percentile was like 70 or 80th percentile, and transition was like 30th. Like he's much better in the half court, but Marshall obviously ran a ton. So I don't know. So in that sense, I think certainly he's going to help a lot for a team that crawls the ball up the floor. But yeah, it's does Deshaun Davis kind of take over more of a ball handling role? Shaq more. It's going to be hairy with these guards, I think. But yeah, it's probably going to be Jimmy Bell to start with. Dare I say it?
Yeah, the guards tough in DFS because they just kind of spread out the minutes and the usage there. Any last thoughts here on Mississippi State, Jack?
I think we covered it pretty much.
All right, let's go to Mizzou. Awesome season for Mizzou last year. 25-10, 57th at Ken Palm. Just a great first season for Gates. They start the season 43rd at Torvik, 55th at Ken Palm. A couple of big-ass losses, though, Gav, starting with Kobe Brown and Demoy Hodge, who was much better than I thought he was going to be coming in. Golston is also gone. Isaiah Mosley, who had an up and down year, is gone. Trey Gamillion and Mohamed Diarra are also gone, but he brings in another haul of transfers. Connor Vanover, Caleb Grill, John Tanya from Colorado State, Tamar Bates from Indiana. What do you think about the roster turnover here and Mizzou's outlook coming in?
Yeah, even for as good of a year as Bama had, this might have been like the most surprising team in the conference just with how well they did. You tie for fourth in the SEC in Dennis Gates' first year. You win a tourney game with only 3 returners from the prior year. Like, just a ridiculous year. Kobe Brown and Demoy Hodge, 2 top 50 nationally ranked O ratings, 2 40% three-point shooters on over 350 combined attempts. Like,
Wow.
That's tough to return. That being said, I think that Dennis Gates clearly showed that he's going to implement a system that, kind of similar to Iowa, is going to be very similar schematic year over year wise, and you just kind of plug and play whoever's going to go in and hit the shots. Caleb Grill can shoot. He's kind of 3-and-D with maybe a little playmaking upside. Tanji shot 37% from 3. Tamar Bates shot 35 and 37% from 3, which is going to fit the fast-paced kind of pace and space game that Missouri wants to play. So I think the offense, gets repaired or is still really good to an extent, but the defense is probably where they fall off a little bit this year.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, this was a top 10 adjusted offensive efficiency team last season, but they do lose a lot. What do you think about the roster turnover here and what they're bringing in?
Yeah, I think the defense is going to be pretty brutal once again. And then I personally don't see like a great shot creator, a great, go-to guy on this team, but Gates kind of, I do trust the Dennis Gates system, and he guided their offense to a much more efficient year than I would have expected. So I'm kind of inclined to just lean into that and trust that he can do something resembling that once again. But I don't think that the talent on this roster is like all that special. I mean, Caleb Grill, Tani, like these are solid players. Noah Carter flashed it a little bit last year. But I think that is like a pretty big step down in terms of overall talent. So I think there's some like floor risk here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, you're just replacing so much, and I think that there just could be a bunch of role players here, right? Like, we've got Nick Honor and Grill are kind of corner standard 3-point guys. Gav, Tamar Bates, probably plays about a half a game, 0.55 fantasy point per minute guy at Indiana. Vanover, got smoked the last time he was in the SEC. Is there anywhere that we can turn here for DFS? I know that we're all kind of high on Carter, but that might just be like just because he's stepping into a big role here. Is it Carter or bust on this team?
Yeah, I mean, we'll call this team a lot of guys, no dudes, in that sense. Which is also going to make it tough for DFS. Like, if there's no real standout usage guys, at least that we can identify early on, it's going to be hard to play on them early on. Like, but I don't think it's automatic that Noah Carter just steps into the Kobe Brown role. We could play him the first night at 7K and look like
he's not going to be 7K. He's going to be 4.8.
Oh, no way. He'll be 7K.
He is.
And we'll play him the first night at 7K, and he'll either score 48 or he'll play 15 minutes, and we'll look like idiots. Like, that's how it's going to be. Like, Vanover, does he fix their, rebounding woes? Man, I don't know. If the ball bounces to him, right to him every single time, yeah, but he doesn't really move his feet well. So I think it's probably going to be Carter on the first night, unless we just get an egregious price on one of these guys to start out.
Yeah, Carter 0.87 fantasy point per minute last year in a bench role. Vanover 1.20 at Oral Bob, but that's mostly on the block right there. And yeah, you mentioned the rebounding concerns. 362nd in defensive rebounding last year. You had said that was it Mississippi State was 363 in last place,
yeah.
So they were second to last in the country there. And then my betting note was Jack 8-0 in games decided by 5 points or less last season. Any last thoughts here on Mizzou, Jack?
Yeah, I mean those close games are something that's going to regress, and I think Mizzou this year. If you're bullish Mizzou, it's a lot of faith in Dennis Gates because I think the risk here is pretty high.
Yeah, I think you're right about the floor. The floor does not feel that safe here. All right, let's go to South Carolina. Just a dog shit team here. 11-21 last year. 221st at Ken Palm. Yeah. Somehow Ken Palm's got him 66 to start this season. Torvik's got him 109th. They lose, obviously, Gigi Jackson to the draft. Hayden Brown is gone. Chico Carter's out. But they bring in a couple of good transfers here, I think. Talon Cooper is in from Minnesota. Miles Stute from Vanderbilt. And BJ Mack from Wofford, I like. What do you think about the roster turnover here, Gav?
Yeah, they another one of these teams that needed some. They were 269th in D1 experience last year. They'll now likely start 4 grad transfers and a junior. Like, I hope Lamont Paris has a daycare center at the gym for these guys. I mean, Jesus Christ. The Gigi Jackson experience, was just absolutely miserable last year. Like, South Carolina was 12 points better on offense without him per 100 and 15 points better on defense without him. Like, that's a plus 27 per 100 possessions when they only play like 60 possessions a game. So, like, think about how that extrapolates, you know? Now they're going to be much older this year. They bring in Talon Cooper from Minnesota, bring in Miles Stute from Vanderbilt, BJ Mack from Wofford. Like, Michi Johnson had a pretty sneaky breakout year last year. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't really know what to expect from him coming in from Ohio State. He had a good year. And then you got some kind of Ichabod Crane-looking Stephen Clark Citadel transfer who, like, in spots he's going to be useful, but he's just going to get pushed around a lot of the time by just a lot of the bigger forwards. So, I just imagine, like, him guarding Janai Broom, like, just getting woodshedded. But BJ Mack's a guy who can stretch it a little bit as a big. Another one of these grad transfers. Stute can shoot it from 3. He was like the 3-point specialist for Vandy. So the team's going to be much more effective from the perimeter. They were dead last in adjusted offensive efficiency in the conference. So they need some shooting. It looks like they got it from the transfer. So don't think they won't be finishing 221st, but also don't think they're going to be threatening the 66th rank that they have on Ken Palm going into the year.
Yeah, that seems way high, Jack, in our eyes at least. What do you think of this roster?
Yeah, I don't think they have a good chance to be an NCAA tournament team, but I think they have a pretty good chance not to be the worst team in this conference. I think that Talon Cooper is pretty solid. I mean, averaging more than 6 assists per game on the Minnesota last year is a pretty impressive feat. So I'd like to see him kind of with the ball in his hands a lot as opposed to Michi Johnson, and then he could, set Michi up for shots. I think Cooper's better as a playmaker, and then Michi could be the scorer between the two. Beyond that, I mean, BJ Mack's solid, Miles Stute's solid. But yeah, I mean, I think you guys pretty much covered it. I'm not expecting, a sudden breakout from this team, but they have some talent, which is, the highest compliments, I can give them.
Yeah. I mean, for a bad team, their backcourt's at least decent, right? I think that those would probably be the only places that we look for DFS because they also play slow, 323rd last year in tempo. I just pulled up like their top 8 projected guys to contribute, all 6'8" or shorter. Gav, any last thoughts here on South Carolina?
I think Jack makes actually a really good point where they move Michi off the ball. So his role could change DFS wise heading into the year for the price that we're going to see on him. So it probably starts with Talon Cooper DFS wise.
All right, let's move on to Tennessee. 25-11 last year, 6th at Ken Palm. Both sites have Tennessee top 8 coming into the year. I know you really, really like this team, Gav. They lose in Kamwa to the portal. Julian Phillips was a second-round pick. Tyreek Key's gone, and Plavsic finally gone. Thank God we don't have to play his ass anymore. They bring in Dalton Knecht from Northern Colorado, Jordan Gainey from upstate, and a couple of Frosh here, including a top 60-ish guy in Cam Carr. Talk to me about Tennessee. It looks like Ziegler's kind of ahead of schedule on the knee recovery.
Yeah, I sure as hell wouldn't recover that fast at my decrepit old age. But you lose Nkamhoua and Phillips, who, like, on the surface, any talent evaluator will say, like, yeah, NBA ability and skill set, but those two guys on Tennessee is like dropping your grandmother into a Ferrari. They don't know how to even start the car, much less drive it. I mean, Rick Barnes did not know how to unlock those guys. So, Nkamhoua took a step back in SEC play last year. So I think, bringing in a little bit more athleticism and shot making with Knecht, Gainey, we'll see what we get. I don't think Gainey's going to be much. I think Gainey looks a lot like Tyreke Key in terms of inefficient guy who's probably given more volume than he should on this team. But you still bring back Zakai Ziegler, Santiago Vescovi, Josiah Jordan-James, and then the big crew of Awaka and Adu. Like, I think like if you ran Adu out 28 minutes a game, he's the conference defensive player of the year. Like, I think he's that kind of level of rim protector. He's like the highest returning SEC defensive BPR. So I think a team that was tied for fourth on a semi-down year last year and lost to FAU, the team of destiny, with kind of a diabolical spread offense matchup for Tennessee's compact defense. I think this is kind of, but it's betting on Rick Barnes in March. One of the most tired narratives I think out there. But we'll see. I still think this team is as good as it gets in the country.
Yeah, this is a pretty gnarly starting five here, Jack, with some really, really good defenders up and down the roster, coming off a season where they were number one in defensive efficiency. What do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be more of the same from Tennessee, at least during the regular season. We'll see if they can put it together in March, like Gav said. But a lot of the same guys they had last year with Vescovi, Ziegler. Maybe Josiah Jordan-James can kind of regain the form that he's shown in the past now that he has the full season. I don't know a whole lot about Dalton Knecht, but I think he has great numbers in Northern Colorado, could really shoot it in Northern Colorado. So I think if he can just be a guy that can shoot the ball, that would be really helpful for them alongside Vescovi. I have read that his defense is pretty bad, but I'm sure that, Rick Barnes is going to find a way to manage that. So, yeah, I think this is probably the best team in the conference. I think that's pretty much the consensus opinion. It's a lot of the same guys back. So really high floor with this team. And then, we'll see if they can put it together in the tourney.
Yeah, Gav, we've talked a lot of projection on a lot of these teams. This is a team where we kind of know what we're going to get, especially DFS-wise, right? Especially if ZZ kind of starts the year and is fine. Where do you think we're looking at for DFS? I think that you're going to be interested in some projection upwards on the two forwards.
Yeah, we'll see what the price comes in on Knecht. They always overprice these up transfers. He was like top 25 in the country in scoring. He's got some pretty good sneaky athleticism to him, but it's the perimeter shooting that's going to help him the most. Like, he was 92nd percentile point per possession in half court and he absolutely just fried zones, 98th percentile. And Tennessee got pressed at a 75th percentile, or pressed. They got zoned because they didn't really have a ton of perimeter shot making, especially when Ziegler went down. So, the thing with JJJ, he's going to have to be healthy. That's another thing. Like, we probably play him until health falls off. He's always a good play with just peripherals. It's all going to be price dependent, right? If any of these guys come in at 9K, you're probably not playing any of them. If any of the Ziegler, Vescovi, JJJ come in at 7K, you're probably playing them.
Yeah. Any last thoughts here on Tennessee, Jack?
Not really. I think we covered it.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to A&M. Intriguing team, bringing back a lot here. Buzz Williams in year, 5 now? It's either 4 or 5. This is the year when he was at Tech, where they had the absolutely gnarly team that should have beaten Duke in the tournament, but we'll move on from there. 25-10 last year, 33rd at KenPom. Torvik's got them 9th to start the season, and KenPom's got them 24th to start the year. Gav, they basically don't lose much at all. They lose Dexter Dennis. That's basically all they have to replace, which is good because they didn't really add that much. Eli Lawrence from MTSU and Levesque from UMass. Talk to me about A&M here.
Yeah, it's the question of these teams that return so much with such an old team. It's like, how much more ceiling do they have? Finishing second place in the SEC to the Alabama juggernaut was obviously over expectation. It was also like one of the most fortunate just star alignments you've ever seen. A&M just has I think a bottom 10 defense in terms of how compact they are. They just pack it in and let you shoot as many threes as you want. And the SEC out of 32 conferences was 32nd in 3-point percentage last year. Just like a historically bad shooting conference wide, along with the 363rd Mississippi State. So does that hold? Because if teams, any given game, if you hit threes against A&M, just like we saw with Penn State in the tourney, you're gonna have a good chance to beat them no matter how much they're favored over you on the spread. But it's a team that just lives off freebies, right? They have the third highest free throw rate, their fifth best offensive rebounding percentage. They're always at the rim. It's not the greatest shot making team outside of kind of Wade Taylor, who had his breakout year, but you lose Dexter Dennis, who was an elite wing defender, and you're just kind of hoping Obaseki that. Brother, it's about time. I mean, how many years we got to talk about this guy? And I don't know if he was a 5-star guy or a top 50, but he was up there in pedigree for sure.
Yeah.
And I think he's a senior now. It's put up or shut up, man, for him this year. But this core of guys, Taylor, Coleman, Obaseki, Boots, was also on that team that damn near ran the tourney in the SEC tourney in 2022 and then got snubbed. So there's definite experience. The question is just, do they really have the ceiling to beat some of these teams with high end NBA talent, sometimes 2-3 deep on a starting lineup.
Yeah, Jack, they pretty much bring back everyone from a really, really good team that went 15-3 in conference last year. What do you think about the roster?
Yeah, I was kind of late on Texas A&M last year. They ended up being much better than I expected, and I was always hesitant of their ability to keep it up. And I'm kind of in that same bucket again this year, but I don't know if that's just me being biased against them for whatever reason, or if that's actually based in anything. Wade Taylor specifically, he was so inefficient as a freshman, and then his usage just skyrocketed last year. Or I guess the usage stayed the same, but the efficiency skyrocketed. And he was doing it over a way larger minute sample. So yeah, it's a lot of the same guys: Taylor, Radford, Coleman. I don't really think that they're as good as a lot of people think they do, but I was that way last year, and I was wrong. And I was wrong a lot of the time. So yeah.
Yeah, Gav, I just think that they're so goddamn solid 1 through 5, and they're so consistent. Boots has been around forever. Marble was better than I thought he was going to be stepping in. Coleman's fine. Wade Taylor, preseason conference player of the year. Where are we looking at in DFS? Is it just going to be picking spots to play Wade Taylor, or are we going to be able to play any of these other guys?
You also got Wilvins Levesque coming in. Does that muddy up the Coleman Marble rotation that was much more solid minutes wise for both guys last year than it had been in years prior?
Yeah,
definitely could. This team is deeper. Some of the depth that they bring into with the up transfers, Jace Carter from UIC, Eli Lawrence from MTSU. It's most of the same guys, a little bit more depth, which they struggled with last year. Yes, for DFS. Obaseki, like I said, if he's in the starting lineup and he's going to be sub 5K, like I imagine he's going to be, it could be worth a cheap flyer early on in the year. A&M wasn't great in non-con last year, but still might get a good minute projection for the price on him. Otherwise, it's going to be, I think you're right, pick and choose spots with Wade.
Yeah, and I just think that this team's floor is so high, right? I think they're going to be top 3 in the conference, probably a top, a 3 or 4 seed, something like that. We took a flyer 15-1 on a Final Four future, Jack. Any last thoughts here on A&M?
Not really.
All right, let's go to Vandy. Last team in the SEC here. Really, really good season for Vandy. 22-15, 81 at KenPom to end the season. Torix got them 82nd to start. KenPom 79 to start. So pretty much where they were. I'm not sure I agreed too much with that. So they lose Liam Robbins, who was awesome when he was healthy last year. Jordan Wright, we talked about earlier in the show. Miles Studi, who we talked about earlier in the show. And Quentin Malora-Brown is also gone. Gav, what do you think about this team here? They've got some younger guys and then some old as shit guys. Magnon played better than I thought he would coming in from UC Davis last year.
Yeah, man, he was kind of slow starting in the year, and then as Stackhouse gave him more leash kind of in conference play, I mean, he really blossomed and played well. Same with Tyron Lawrence became, a pretty good scorer. They do lose a ton, man. Like Liam Robbins was, I mean, he was up there with arguably one of the most best point per possession guys on both sides of the floor for a team in the conference. Jordan Wright, not only veteran senior leadership, but 3-point shot making as well as Studi. It puts a ton on Colin Smith and Van Allen Lubin, the Notre Dame transfer, who people are pretty high on, played well for Team USA and FIBA. But boy, the depth on this team is not what it was last year. So yeah, it's gonna come down a lot more to the starting lineup, I would say, this go around, and we might not see Stack pushing around minutes, like it's a lottery the way he was last year.
Yeah, Jack, lot for Stack to replace on this team with Robbins, Wright, and Studi out the door. What do you think about the current version of Vandy here?
Yeah, I think this guard duo is like one of the more underrated in the country. Tyron Lawrence was like amazing over the second half of last year. From February on, he was averaging 16 points a game on 65% true shooting. Like he's not going to have 65% true shooting again. But I mean, that shows like a high level of skill, I think. And I think him being the guy this year, I think he can do well with it. Magnon was setting the table pretty well and scoring a good amount in his own right. So I think that these guards are pretty good. I don't think that they're going to end up like carrying them that far because the rest of the roster, like you guys alluded to, isn't all that great. But on Magnon and Lawrence specifically, I think those two are pretty like real high major contributors.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Lawrence, Magnon, and Van Allen Lubin if he can play enough minutes for us, Gav, in DFS. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, I think Lubin is definitely going to be the first look, just given the role that he's probably going to be handed. And then it goes to Magnon or Lawrence pending price.
Yep. All right, that is all 14 teams in the SEC. Wow, we're actually ahead of Monday's pace. So before we end the show, Jack, we always do our picks for the first team all conference, and then we'll do a quick little breakout guys draft. So Jack, we'll actually start with you here. Who do you have for your SEC first team all conference picks?
Yeah, should I do like all five?
Yeah.
Okay. Or should I do like 10 like they're all doing this year?
If you do 10, we're just gonna stop the show.
Yeah, I'll stick with 5. I'll go 5. I do have 7 names here, but I'll pick 5 of them. I'll go Wade Taylor, Tolu Smith, assuming he's healthy, Janai Broom, and then I have the last. I think those 3 are like my 3 favorites in the conference. Beyond that, I have Vescovi, who I'm not sure he has like the ceiling to actually be like a true SEC all first team guy, but he seems like he's the best player on Tennessee, so he should be included. And then I think whoever's better between Justin Edwards and DJ Wagner is going to be on there. Justin Edwards seems like he's getting a lot of the hype right now, so I'll go with him. Just missing the cut, I had Brazil and Grant Nelson, but those were my 5.
All right, Gav, what do you got?
So for me personally, I had the locks as Wade Taylor, Vescovi, and Broom.
Yeah.
Then I added Brazil. I think what he adds to Arkansas and the way that a lot of those shot-making guards, plus we didn't even really touch on Devo Davis a ton, right? As much as we should and what he meant for the team. Like I think they cannibalize each other a good amount. and Brazil kind of stands out. And then the fifth spot, it's supposed to be Toulouse, but if he's going to come in with a foot injury and not have any chance to be healthy before January, starting the year behind the 8 ball, I thought maybe a Kentucky freshman. Nah, I can't buy into the freshman. So I put Grant Nelson just with the counting stats that he's going to put up in Bama's game of fast tempo, defense being down. They're going to have to push a ton, and Sears, Estrada, Griffin, all going to cannibalize each other. Nelson's going to be fed workload. It was like the prominent transfer, so I went with him for the fifth spot.
All right, yeah, I've got the same 3 locks: Wade Taylor, Vescovi, and Janai Broom. I also have Jervon Brazil on first team. I think he's just going to explode this season. Seems to be coming into the year healthy, which is going to help. I think he's going to be the best player on a really good Arkansas team. And then my fifth one with the Tolu injury, I went off the board a bit, and I'm assuming that those transfer waivers don't go through. And I went with Matt Morrell. I just think like the counting stats on a team without Murray or Cisse, that he could just absolutely have a nuke year and be a borderline first round pick after the season. So I'll go with Matt Morrell as my fifth pick, kind of a dark horse, all conference first team guy. All right, let's wrap up with some breakout guys. Gav, I'll go to you first. You get first draft pick here because I know that you're going to pick someone off the board, so it won't matter for Jack and I.
Exactly. I'm going to go Damian Collins at LSU. Talked about there being a little bit of a wing logjam over there, but I think he could even play potentially some small ball 5. I think another guy kind of similar to what Jack was mentioning about Melendez, with when you got the talent and sometimes you just need a change of scenery, man. And him getting this at LSU, I think there's some shot making upside for him as well. It might not be a 30-minute type role. I think it's probably more in the range of 22 to 26 on a night. But if you can chip in, 8, 9, 10 points and have 4 or 5 rebounds at that, considering that you basically you've been stapled to the friggin' bench the last 2 years, I'd call that a breakout.
Yeah, that's a good dark horse one for sure. All right, Jack, what do you got?
Yeah, mine's a bit more popular. I'm going to go with Riley Kugel, average 10 points on good efficiency. As a freshman, this Florida team I'm pretty bullish on. I think that Kugel can take the sophomore leap. I've seen him on NBA draft boards, so I think that he's kind of on everyone's radar already, but it seems like a pretty obvious breakout for me.
Yeah, he was my number one guy too. Mentioned earlier when Castleton went down, averaged 17.3 points per game, shooting 38% from 3. I think he's a great pick. I'll go with Rylan Griffin. I think on this Bama team, I think that he's going to be asked to do a lot more. And like you saw with Gavin's pick, we like to choose guys who didn't play that many minutes stepping into a much larger role. I think he starts on the wing here. And just has a chance to kind of blossom here. So, on a team surrounded by up transfers, he has the reputation of being a good shooter, even though he didn't shoot the ball that well, kind of in a shit role off the bench last year. But I've got Rylan Griffin as my first guy. Gav, who's your second?
I'll take Van Allen Lubin on Vandy, Notre Dame transfer. Part of the reason why I like him to break out is just because I think every other forward on Vanderbilt is just awful. Just terrible. Colin Smith, bad. Tesos Camateros, bad. Lee Dort, don't even get me started. I think Lubin gets thrust into a minimum 28-minute per game role, which, would increase him by more than 10 minutes a game. He's got great rates. As kind of an athletic guy who I think is going to pose some athleticism problems for slower moving bigs in the league, and kind of what he can do in Vandy's offense and with Stackhouse. So I'll take Van Allen Lubin.
All right, Jack, you're up.
Yeah, this one wasn't quite as deep, but it is another Vandy guy. I'm going to go with Ezra Manjon. He was just so good over the second half of last year. Maybe he doesn't even count because you could classify his second half of the season as a breakout already, but my second one was going to be Rylan Griffin anyway, so I'm going to find someone else here quick and go with Ezra Manjon.
Yeah, I think that anyone that the majority of people who watch college basketball haven't heard of is fine. I'll go with Noah Carter, who we mentioned earlier. Gav was not as high as I think you and I are, Jack. I just think that he's going to step into a pretty big role here. The minutes bump is going to be the biggest thing for me. He played 21.9 last year. I think we see 28 plus here. Was a 0.87 fantasy point per minute guy last season. With Kobe Brown, Hodge, Golston, Mosley all gone, someone's going to have to take the usage. And Carter was so efficient last year that I think he's going to be just fine. So, all right, we are done with 2 shows, under an hour and a half again. We'll be back actually tomorrow night, Gav. We've got the Big East show with our friend Troy Mocker from Bet Rivers tomorrow night. Talking a very, very fun Big East conference. A couple of new coaches there, a couple of shakeups, and a lot of high upside teams, I think. So we will see you guys tomorrow night. If you can't catch any of these shows live, obviously they'll be on YouTube and in podcast form as well. For Gav, thanks for joining us, Jack. I'm sure we'll do more shows down the road. I'm Steve. We will check you next time.